The jingle of the old diner's door was the best sound Francisca had heard all night. It meant the last customer was gone, and her 12-hour shift was finally over. The clock on the wall read 2:17 a.m. With a tired sigh, she slid into a cracked vinyl booth and pulled a worn envelope from her apron. Carefully, she spilled the night's tips onto the table. Coins clinked and a few crumpled bills unfolded. She counted slowly, her heart sinking. It was less than she'd hoped. She divided the money into 2 mental piles. This smaller stack was for her rent, due in 3 days. The larger, dreamier pile was for nursing school. It was a far-off mountain she was climbing 1 penny at a time. Just as she was smoothing out a $5 bill, the sharp ring of the diner's phone shattered the silence. Francisca jumped. No one called this late. It was probably a wrong number. She thought about letting it ring. But what if it was her landlord? With a knot of worry in her stomach, she walked to the counter and picked up the receiver. "Hello, Moonlight Diner," she said, her voice rough with tiredness. The sound on the other end was not an adult. It was the ragged, hitched breathing of a child trying not to sob. Hello," a small, trembling voice whispered. Francisca's weariness vanished, replaced by instant alertness. "Hi there," she said, her voice softening. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" My dad," the boy stammered, his words tumbling out in a rush. "He's on the floor. There's red stuff everywhere. A pool of it. He won't wake up. He won't answer me." A full-blown cry finally broke through. "Please. I'm scared." Francisca's blood ran cold. A pool of red. Her mind, trained by countless hours dreaming of being a nurse, conjured the image instantly. Blood. A lot of it. Her grip on the phone tightened until her knuckles turned white. This wasn't a prank, this was pure terror. "Okay. Sweetie, listen to me," she said, forcing her voice to stay calm, a stark contrast to the panic rising in her own chest. "What's your name?" "Leo," he cried. "Okay, Leo. My name is Francisca. You are being so brave. I need you to be brave for just a little longer. Can you tell me your address?" Leo recited an address on the other side of the city, a neighborhood of big, quiet houses she only ever delivered takeout to. Her first thought was to tell him to call an ambulance. But he was just a little boy, alone and terrified. What if he couldn't explain? What if they were too slow? The image of a man bleeding out on a floor while his son watched was too much to bear. "I'm coming, Leo," she said, making a decision that would change everything. "I'm coming right now. Don't open the door for anyone else, you understand? Only me." She hung up the phone, her heart thudding against her ribs. Her eyes darted back to the booth, to the sad little piles of money that represented her future. Without another thought, she swept all of it, every last coin and bill, into her apron pocket, grabbed her jacket, and ran out into the cold night, not even bothering to lock the diner door behind her. Her old car coughed and sputtered to life. The drive was a blur of streetlights and frantic thoughts. She pushed the car faster than she should have, Leo's terrified sobs echoing in her mind. She found the house, a dark, massive shape looming behind a tall iron gate. It was fancy, just like she'd guessed, but it felt strangely empty and silent. The front door was unlocked. She pushed it open slowly. "Leo? It's Francisca," she called out, her voice echoing in the vast, expensive space. A small figure darted out from the shadows of a hallway and latched onto her legs, burying his face in her worn jeans. He was a little boy with messy dark hair and huge, tear-filled eyes. He pointed a shaking finger towards a grand living room. Francisca's breath caught in her throat. There, on a beautiful, expensive Persian rug, lay a man. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a once-white shirt that was now stained a shocking, wet crimson. One of his hands was stretched out, as if he'd been trying to crawl for help. His skin was pale, almost gray. A dark pool of blood had soaked into the rug beneath his torso, and the metallic smell of it filled the air. For a terrifying second, Francisca thought she was too late. But then she saw the faint, shallow rise and fall of his chest. He was alive, but only just. "See," Leo whimpered, his small body trembling against her. "I told you." Francisca's nursing instincts kicked in. She gently pried Leo off her legs and knelt by the man. He was handsome, with a strong jawline now slack with unconsciousness. He looked powerful, even in this broken state. She pressed 2 fingers to his neck, searching for a pulse. It was there, a weak, fluttering thread. She saw the wound then, a nasty, deep gash on his side that was still slowly seeping blood. She needed to stop the bleeding. Ripping a cushion from a nearby sofa, she pressed it hard against the wound, using her body weight to apply pressure. The man didn't even flinch. "We need to get him to a hospital, Leo," she said, her voice tight with effort. She fumbled for her phone, but her pocket was empty. She'd left it at the diner in her rush. There was no landline in sight. Her mind raced. An ambulance would take time, and she had no way to call one. She looked at the man's pale face, then at Leo's terrified one. There was only one choice. "Come on," she said, her voice firm. "We're taking him ourselves." Somehow, with a strength she didn't know she possessed, she managed to drag the heavy, unconscious man across the floor and out the front door. Leo followed like a shadow, clutching the hem of her jacket. She half-dragged, half-carried the man down the steps and towards her beat-up car, struggling to open the back door. Getting his large, limp body into the back seat was a monumental task that left her gasping and smeared with his blood. She buckled him in as best she could, then helped Leo into the passenger seat before sprinting to the driver's side. The engine roared to life. She sped through the sleeping city, running red lights, her eyes constantly flicking to the rearview mirror, praying he was still breathing. When she screeched up to the emergency room entrance, she screamed for help. Orderlies rushed out with a gurney, expertly transferring the man from her car. As they wheeled him away through the swinging doors, a new kind of dread filled her. She stood in the bright, sterile light of the hospital, her clothes stained with blood, her car looking like a crime scene. Leo stood beside her, silent tears streaming down his face. A woman at the front desk asked for insurance, for a deposit, for information. Francisca's hand went to her apron pocket. She pulled out the crumpled, blood-smeared mass of bills and coins, her rent, her school, her entire future. She didn't hesitate. She pushed it all across the counter. "This is all I have," she whispered, her voice raw. "Please, help him." The woman's eyes widened, but she took the money. Hours later, Francisca sat in a hard plastic chair in the waiting room. Leo had finally fallen into an exhausted sleep, his head resting in her lap. She gently stroked his hair, her own eyes dry and aching. She had no money, her clothes were ruined, and she had no idea who the man was. All she knew was that a little boy needed his father, and she had given everything she had to make sure that could still happen. She stared at the double doors that had swallowed the mysterious, handsome man, wondering if he would live, and what would happen to her if he did. The cliffhanger of his survival, and the shocking truth of his identity, hung in the air, as heavy as the silence in the room. The fluorescent lights of the hospital hummed like trapped insects. Francisca sat stiffly in the plastic chair, Leo a warm, sleeping weight in her lap. Her clothes were stiff with dried blood, a stranger's blood. The envelope in her apron pocket was now terrifyingly empty. Every cent, every dream of school and security, was gone, traded for the life of the man behind the swinging doors. A doctor in blue scrubs finally emerged, his face etched with a deep tiredness. Francisca gently shifted Leo and stood up, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "Is he?" She couldn't finish the question. "He's stable for now," the doctor said, his voice low. "But he's lost a tremendous amount of blood, and the stab wound did severe damage. It nicked his renal artery. One of his kidneys it's failing. It's beyond repair." The medical terms swirled in Francisca's tired mind, but the finality in his tone was clear. This was worse than she had imagined. "What does that mean?" she whispered. "It means he needs a nephrectomy. We have to remove the damaged kidney, and then he'll need a transplant. So, without a new kidney, his other one won't be able to handle the strain. He might not survive the week." The world seemed to tilt. A transplant. That meant donors, waiting lists, a miracle. She looked down at Leo, his peaceful face in sleep a cruel contrast to the nightmare he was living. He was going to lose his father. After everything, it wasn't enough. How do you find a donor? Francisca asked, her voice hollow. We test family members first. But according to the boy, his mother is not in the picture. There are no other relatives listed. The doctor sighed. We'll run his blood type and put him on the national registry, but time is not on his side. An idea, wild and terrifying, sparked in Francisca's mind. It was so absurd she almost dismissed it. But then she looked at Leo again, and the memory of the man's pale, handsome face flashed before her. She had already given all her money. What was one more thing? Test me, she heard herself say. The doctor blinked. I'm sorry. Test me. For the donation. See if I'm a match. Miss, that's highly irregular. You're not family. The chances are astronomically low. Please, Francisca said, and the word was a raw plea. Just test me. The little boy, he can't be alone. Moved by her desperate conviction, the doctor agreed. The next few hours were a blur of needles, paperwork, and strange, clinical rooms. They took vials of her blood, explaining it was for tissue typing and cross-matching. Francisca signed forms she didn't fully understand, her hand trembling. She felt like she was in a dream, hurtling towards a cliff edge. She was exhausted, broke, and now offering a part of her own body to a man whose name she still didn't know. She stayed with Leo, telling him stories, buying him juice from a vending machine with the last few coins she found deep in her pocket. She called her landlord and lied, her voice shaking, saying her money had been stolen. She called the diner and quit, knowing she could never go back, not with the memory of that night clinging to her. Her old life was being stripped away, piece by piece. 2 days later, the doctor found her in the waiting room. His expression was one of pure, unvarnished shock. I don't know how to explain this, he began, shaking his head. It's unprecedented in my experience. Miss Francisca, you're a match. A perfect tissue match. It's as if you were a sibling. Francisca's legs gave way, and she sat down hard on the chair. A perfect match. The words echoed in the silent room. It wasn't just a chance, it felt like fate. A terrifying, life-altering fate. The decision loomed before her, larger and more frightening than anything she had ever faced. This wasn't money. This was a piece of herself. She thought of the risks, the pain, the permanent change to her own body. She was scared. So deeply scared she could taste it, metallic and cold. That night, she sat by Leo's temporary bed in the children's ward. He was drawing a picture, a stick figure of a man, a boy, and a woman with yellow crayon hair. Is my dad going to be okay? He asked, his big eyes filled with a hope that shattered her heart. And in that moment, all her fear melted away, replaced by a fierce, protective certainty. She could not let this little boy become an orphan. She would not. Yes, Leo, she said, her voice steady for the first time in days. He is. The surgery was scheduled for the next morning. As she was prepped, lying on a gurney in a cold hospital gown, a wave of final panic washed over her. What was she doing? Who was this man? But then she thought of Leo's smile, and the weak flutter of the man's pulse under her fingers in that grand, bloody room. She had felt his life then, and she would not let it go. When she woke up, there was a deep, dull ache in her side. It was real. She had done it. One of her healthy kidneys was no longer hers. It was now inside him, working, filtering, giving him life. It was another day before she was well enough to be wheeled into his room. He was awake. Adriano was propped up on pillows, still pale and connected to wires and tubes, but his eyes were open. They were a startling shade of green, like deep forest moss, and they were fixed on her. The cold, dangerous man she might have imagined was nowhere to be seen. In his place was a man whose gaze held a storm of emotions, confusion, weakness, and a dawning, awestruck wonder. Leo was perched carefully on the edge of his father's bed, chattering excitedly. Papa, that's her. That's Francisca. She came when I called, and she brought us here, and she stayed with me, and she gave the doctors her money, and then she gave you her kidney. She's a hero. Adriano listened to his son's torrent of words, his eyes never leaving Francisca's face. As Leo spoke, Francisca saw the understanding dawn, the sheer, impossible magnitude of her actions sinking in. He had been saved not by a doctor, but by her. This woman, with tired eyes and gentle hands, had dismantled her own life and offered a part of her very body to save a complete stranger. Tears, slow and deliberate, welled in the formidable man's eyes and traced a path down his cheeks. He didn't bother to wipe them away. "Francisca," he said, and his voice was a rough, broken whisper, yet it filled the quiet room with its intensity. It was the first time she had heard him say her name, and it sent a shiver through her tired body. He tried to find words, to articulate the gratitude that was too large for language. He failed. All he could do was look at her, his gaze warm and amazed, stripping away all her sacrifice and fear and seeing only the incredible woman beneath it. He slowly, weakly, lifted his hand from the bedsheet, his fingers trembling with the effort. He reached towards her. Francisca, her own body aching and vulnerable, met him halfway. She slid her hand into his. His fingers closed around hers. They were warm, strong, even in his weakness. It wasn't just a touch, it was a connection, an electric current that sealed their fates together. In that single, silent clasp, she felt his entire story, the danger, the loneliness, the fierce love for his son, and a profound, humbling thankfulness that shook him to his core. He looked at their joined hands, then back into her eyes. The look was no longer just one of gratitude. It was something deeper, more tender, and powerfully possessive. She had given him back his life. And in that moment, lying in a hospital bed, forever linked to her by blood and tissue and an act of pure love, Adriano knew, with a certainty that eclipsed all else, that his life, his heart, and his forever, now belonged to her. The silence of the mountains was the first thing Francisca noticed. It wasn't the empty silence of her old apartment, but a deep, peaceful quiet, broken only by the whisper of wind through tall pine trees. Adriano's safe house wasn't a hideout. It was a beautiful, sprawling lodge made of logs and glass, perched on the edge of a crystal blue lake. It felt a world away from the gritty city streets and the fluorescent glare of the hospital. The weeks of recovery there were a slow, sweet dance. Their bodies healed side by side, their scars, his on his side, hers on hers, a permanent, physical reminder of their bond. During the day, Leo's laughter echoed through the halls as he rediscovered his father, whole and present. In the evenings, the three of them would sit by the massive stone fireplace, and Adriano would quietly teach Francisca how to play chess, his large, capable hands gently guiding hers over the pieces. It was during one of these quiet games, the fire crackling warmly, that he finally told her the whole truth. "The men who did this to me," he began, his voice low and steady, his eyes on the chessboard, "they were rivals. In my business, there are no rules. Only power." He moved his knight, a careful, strategic motion. "I am not just a businessman, Francisca. The world I come from, it is a dark one. I have done things to protect what is mine. I am a man people fear." Francisca's hand, hovering over her queen, stilled. She looked at him, at the fierce love in his eyes when he looked at Leo, at the gentle reverence in his touch when he looked at her. This was not a monster. This was a man who had built a fortress around his heart to survive. "I understand," she whispered, and she found that she truly did. The danger didn't repulse her. It made his tenderness towards her feel even more precious, a secret gift only she received. He reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb stroking the back of her palm. "You saved me in every way a person can be saved," he said, his green eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "My body," he said, his gaze dropping for a moment to his side, where her kidney now lived, "and my heart. You walked into my darkness and you were the only light I have ever seen." He didn't buy her a new home or pay for the best nursing school to pay her back. He did it to build a future with her. "The dream you had, climbing that mountain one penny at a time," he told her one sunlit morning on the porch, "I want to put you at the summit. Not because you need me to, but because I get to watch you shine." Their love did not explode into being. It unfolded, like a flower in the safe warmth of the sun. It was in the soft, lingering touches as they passed each other in the hallway. It was in the way he would pull her into his arms for no reason at all, just to rest his chin on her head and breathe her in, as if assuring himself she was real. It was in the slow, deep kisses they shared under the star-dusted sky, kisses that held all the promise and passion of a forever that had once been stolen from them. One evening he led her down to the dock on the lake. The water was a sheet of black glass, reflecting 1,000 twinkling stars. Leo was safely asleep inside, and the world was utterly still. Adriano turned to her, taking both of her hands in his. The moonlight carved out the strong lines of his face, but his expression was soft, utterly vulnerable. "Francisca," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "You gave me your kidney. A piece of yourself will be with me, keeping me alive, for as long as I draw breath." He brought her hand to his lips and kissed her palm, a touch so intimate it sent a shiver through her entire body. "But you gave me back my life. You gave a father back to his son. You showed me a love that is not about power or fear, but about pure, selfless sacrifice." He looked deep into her eyes, his own glistening. "Now, my life and my heart are yours forever. They were yours from the moment you walked into my house and refused to let me go. Stay with me. Be my wife. Let us be a family." Tears of pure, unshadowed joy streamed down Francisca's face. There was no hesitation. In his arms, with Leo sleeping peacefully nearby, she had found a home more real than any she had ever known. "Yes," she breathed. "Always." As he kissed her, a seal on their promise under the infinite sky, the final piece of her old life, the fear, the struggle, the loneliness, melted away forever. They were no longer a waitress, a boss, and a scared little boy. They were Francisca, Adriano, and Leo. A family. Their love story, born from a desperate late-night call and a sacrifice that defied all reason, was now a forever kind of loyalty, built on a bond that was quite literally unbreakable. We hope you were swept away by this incredible story of sacrifice and forever love. If your heart is still beating a little faster, we need to hear from you. Subscribe to our channel for more breathtaking romances where love conquers all. In the comments below, tell us where you are watching from and share your thoughts. Were you on the edge of your seat when Francisca gave her kidney? Did Adriano's confession make your heart melt? Let us know what you felt during this powerful journey.